Some dangers arrive with noise. An earthquake shakes the ground. A storm darkens the sky. A fire fills the air with smoke. But some dangers arrive with no warning at all. No sound, no color, no smell. On the night of April 26, 1986, an explosion destroyed part of a nuclear reactor in northern Ukraine, in the Soviet Union. The fire was visible. Smoke rose into the dark sky. Emergency crews could see the flames. But the most dangerous part of this disaster could not be seen. Radiation energy released from damaged nuclear material spread silently through the air. It moved across the city. It crossed rivers. It crossed borders. It reached countries that were thousands of kilometers away. And yet, for many hours, the people living closest to the danger were not warned. This is the story of Chernobyl. Not only a story about a nuclear accident, a story about invisible danger, delayed truth, human responsibility, and broken trust. A story about what happens when the truth is hidden and what happens when it can no longer stay hidden. The invisible became impossible to ignore. Chapter 1. The city that trusted the future. Before Chernobyl became a word the world remembered, it was a place where people lived. The city nearest to the Chernobyl nuclear power plant was called Pripyat. It was located in northern Ukraine, inside the Soviet Union. Pripyat was a young city. It was built in the 1970s, specifically for the workers and families connected to the nuclear power plant. It was considered a model city, a city designed to represent the best of Soviet progress. The apartments were modern. The streets were wide. There were schools, a hospital, a sports center, a swimming pool, a cinema, and a public park with a Ferris wheel. For the people of Pripyat, daily life felt normal. Children walked to school with notebooks under their arms. Workers took the bus to the power plant each morning. Families bought bread and milk from local shops. In the evenings, people sat in their apartment kitchens, talked, listened to the radio, and watched their children grow. Life seemed normal. And in many ways, it was. But Pripyat was built close to something powerful. The Chernobyl nuclear power plant had 4 large reactors. A nuclear reactor is a machine that produces energy by splitting atoms. This energy created electricity enough to power millions of homes. Nuclear energy was a symbol of the future. The Soviet government was proud of it. Workers felt they were part of something important. People trusted the system. They trusted the science. They trusted the engineers. They trusted that the government had checked everything carefully. But trust and safety are not always the same thing. Inside the design of the RBMK reactor, the type of reactor used at Chernobyl, there were technical weaknesses. These weaknesses were not widely discussed. They were not clearly explained to the workers. The problems were known to some scientists and officials, but that information did not travel far. The city looked safe. The apartments stood tall. The park was open. The power plant hummed with energy. But close to danger, in a quiet, invisible way, risks were growing. And on one spring night, those risks would come to the surface, because the future of this city depended on a machine. And that night, that machine would be tested. Chapter 2. The test that was meant to prove safety. On the evening of April 25, 1986, a team of operators at the Chernobyl nuclear power plant prepared for a safety test on Reactor 4. A safety test is a test designed to check whether a system can remain safe during a problem. In this case, the test was meant to answer a specific question. If the reactor lost its main electrical power, could the remaining energy keep the cooling pumps running long enough for the backup generators to start? It was a reasonable question. It was an important question, and the answer was supposed to make the reactor safer. But the test itself was carried out under pressure, in unsafe conditions. There were problems from the beginning. The test had been delayed from the daytime to the night shift. The operators working at night were not the ones who had originally prepared for the test. The reactor's power had dropped too low, and operators tried to raise it again. Some safety systems were switched off deliberately as part of the test procedure. Step by step, the situation got worse. The reactor entered an unstable condition. At very low power, the RBMK reactor had a hidden weakness, a design problem that made it harder to control. Under certain conditions, instead of slowing down when operators tried to reduce power, the reactor could speed up. This was not widely known to the operators. It was not clearly written in their instructions. It was not openly discussed in their training. Something went wrong not because of one single mistake, but because of many connected failures. Reactor design problems, weak safety culture, missing information, delayed tests. Operator decisions made under pressure without full understanding of the danger. One step led to another, and each step moved the reactor closer to a point it could not return from. At 1:23 in the morning on April 26, 1986, the operators attempted an emergency shutdown. But instead of stopping the reaction, the shutdown triggered a sudden, uncontrollable surge of power. Then, the problem could no longer stay hidden inside the reactor. Chapter 3. The Explosion and the Invisible Danger. In the middle of the night, Reactor 4 exploded. The explosion was enormous. It destroyed the top of the reactor building. It sent fragments of nuclear fuel and graphite, the material used inside the reactor core, into the air and onto the rooftops of nearby buildings. A fire began almost immediately. The flames were visible from a distance. The reactor exploded, and for the first time, the hidden danger became physical. Emergency crews were called. Firefighters arrived quickly. They climbed onto rooftops. They pointed water at the flames. They worked through the night, responding to an emergency that they understood as a fire. But this was not only a fire. Radiation invisible energy released from damaged nuclear material was spreading through the air. It was in the smoke. It was in the dust. It was on the fragments of graphite scattered around the plant. Visible fire. Invisible danger. The firefighters could see the flames. They could feel the heat. But they could not see radiation. They could not smell it. They could not hear it. In many cases, they did not fully understand how much radiation they were exposed to. A dosimeter is a small device that measures how much radiation a person receives. A Geiger counter is a device that can detect radiation in the environment. That night, some radiation levels were so high that ordinary instruments could not measure them properly. Later reports and medical records showed that some first responders received dangerous doses. But we must describe this carefully. This was real suffering, not a scene for shock. The point is not to make the disaster feel like horror. The point is to understand how dangerous invisible radiation can be when people do not receive clear information in time. The situation got worse as the hours passed. The graphite fire continued to burn. Radioactive material continued to rise into the atmosphere. The wind carried it further beyond the plant, beyond the roads, beyond the fields. And yet, the nearby city of Pripyat, less than 3 kilometers away, had not been warned. No public announcement was made. No alarm was sounded. No evacuation was ordered. Not yet. While responders faced the danger, The nearby city was still waiting for the truth. Chapter 4. The City Leaves and Others. Stay. By the morning of April 26th, Pripyat looked almost the same as before. Children got ready for school. People stood at bus stops. Some residents noticed unusual activity near the power plant, but there was no official warning. The warning was delayed. It was not until the afternoon of April 27th, more than 36 hours after the explosion, that the evacuation of Pripyat began. Evacuation means moving people away from danger. Buses arrived in the city. Residents were told to pack small bags. They were told the evacuation was temporary. Many believed they would return home in a few days. Most of them never returned home. About 49,000 people were evacuated from Pripyat. They left behind apartments, photographs, toys, school notebooks, and apartment keys. The city was evacuated, but the people did not yet understand how serious the situation was, because the full truth was not given to them immediately. Forced to leave, carrying only what they could hold, families boarded buses and drove away from the city they had trusted. At the same time, other people were moving in the opposite direction. While residents left, emergency workers, soldiers, miners, engineers, helicopter crews, and medical staff were sent toward the disaster. They were sent to clean up the disaster, to contain the radiation, and to prevent the situation from becoming worse. These workers became known as liquidators. A liquidator was a person sent to help manage and clean up the consequences of the Chernobyl disaster. According to available estimates, hundreds of thousands of liquidators worked at or near the site in the months and years that followed. Some liquidators cleared radioactive debris from the rooftop of the damaged reactor, working in very short shifts because the radiation levels were extremely high. Others helped build the sarcophagus, a large concrete and steel structure designed to cover the destroyed reactor and contain the remaining radioactive material. The liquidators did not choose the disaster, but they faced the consequences. They carried out the work that the situation demanded. Some received high radiation doses, and some suffered serious health effects. But long-term health effects are complex. They should be described carefully, using major scientific assessments. Immediate deaths, acute radiation sickness, thyroid cancer findings, and long-term statistical estimates are different categories. They should not be mixed together casually. The most important point is this. Ordinary people carried the burden of a disaster created by a system failure. Some people were forced to leave, others were sent to stay. And the cost was carried not by institutions, but by ordinary people. But even after the city emptied, the disaster kept moving outward. Chapter 5. The Truth Crossed Borders. For the first 2 days after the explosion, the Soviet government did not make a full public statement about what had happened. Inside the country, information was controlled. Officials communicated carefully. Reports moved slowly. The word Chernobyl had not yet appeared in the international press, but radiation does not wait for permission to cross a border. On April 28, 1986, 2 days after the explosion, workers at the Forsmark nuclear power plant in Sweden noticed something unusual. Their monitoring instruments detected abnormal levels of radiation. At first, they checked their own facility for leaks. They found nothing wrong internally. The radiation was coming from somewhere else. It had traveled across the atmosphere, carried by the wind, from Ukraine to Scandinavia. The truth came out not through a press conference, but through scientific instruments. Detection means finding something that is present, but not immediately visible. And the instruments in Sweden detected what the official reports had not yet admitted. It was impossible to hide. you can delay an announcement. But you cannot stop radiation from reaching a Geiger counter in another country. Under growing international pressure, the Soviet government acknowledged the accident. But by then, the evidence had already spoken for itself. Chernobyl changed the world in ways that lasted far beyond the fire. Trust was broken between citizens and their government, between nations, between the public and the institutions that managed nuclear energy. Chernobyl showed that when danger is invisible, trust, transparency, and honest communication become safety systems too. Nuclear safety standards were reviewed and strengthened internationally. Emergency communication procedures were reformed. The RBMK reactor design was modified. The disaster became a lesson from history studied by engineers, scientists, doctors, governments, and educators around the world. The exclusion zone, an area where people are not allowed to live because it may still be dangerous, remains in place around Chernobyl to this day. The city of Pripyat still stands. The city was abandoned. The Ferris wheel never opened to the public. The apartment blocks are silent. Trees grow through the pavement. Warning signs mark the edges of the zone. The invisible became impossible to ignore, and the empty city became the proof. Final reflection. Chernobyl was not a story about monsters or glowing skies. It was a story about systems, about pressure, about information that did not move quickly enough, about a design flaw that was known but not clearly shared, about a safety test carried out under unsafe conditions, about people who were not warned in time, and it was a story about ordinary people who carried the cost. Firefighters who responded to a fire they could see and a danger they could not. Residents who trusted their city and left it in a single afternoon. Liquidators who measured, cleaned, and built, knowing the danger was real. Responsibility matters, not because blame is simple, but because systems are built by people, and people can choose to share information honestly, to warn clearly, to act early, and to protect the ones who cannot protect themselves. The most important lesson of Chernobyl may be this: when the danger is invisible, the truth becomes the only protection. And truth, unlike radiation, is something we can choose to share.